pockets of French knowledge and how regularly you study English.
We'll be speaking about education dynamics from practice to policy. So, allow me to invite our colleague, please.
صباح الخير جميعا واهلا وسهلا بضيوف الكرام. I was a speaker in Khartoum. Good morning. I was a speaker in Khartoum last month on the occasion of the Digital Day. And before that, I was speaking in Seoul in South Korea. But today I'm speaking from my country, Jordan. So what's better way than to start by telling you my story and to fluid, hopefully, the history of how it all started in Jordan in terms of merging technology into education right from square one. In 2002, there was a signed memorandum of understanding between the UNDP and the government of Jordan, by which I was commissioned to start the very first ICT policy in Jordan and start a program that would eventually train all the teachers in Jordan on ICT literacy and merging technology in education inside the classroom. Let me tell you a little bit about my first day on the job. I was requested to secure funding of $2 million through the Prime Ministry. And then I was supposed to get approval on changing the law and incorporating and initiating a new ICT unit in Jordan, which needed parliamentary approval. So you can imagine how difficult bureaucratic start I had. But what I really found out, that the Directorate of Training, Supervision and Rehabilitation, through which I'm supposed to run a countrywide program, did not have any computers. Can you imagine that? So my first request was to purchase 20 computers and issue the first training workshop for the members of the Directorate of Training in order to start such a national program. To cut a long story short, this program ended to be one of the best in the Arab world at that time. Eventually we managed to train all 100,000 teachers on ICT literacy, and then on e-readiness for e-learning, and e-learning by using digitized material. And I dare say for the first time in Jordan, we decentralized so many models. But let me just recount one model from the World Bank, a reliable source, which says if you have these three pillars, you can turn around your national economy into a knowledge-based economy. What does it mean? A sound socio-economic regime. What does that mean? It means a solid platform which is horizontal, and I'm not talking about, with all respect, isolated silos like SDGs or others, as good as they are. I'm talking about a solid vertical platform on which all official corporations are built, namely on accountability, transparency, rule of law, governance, digitization, and preservation of information, etc. Then we have education. And as we very well know, education is no longer inside walls or within walls. Education is now open, it is self-learning, lifelong learning. But why do we focus on K-12, and hopefully very soon it will be K-16? We focus on that because this is where you get your maximum investment return, and you get to save generations that we are graduating every year into unknown futures. And then comes innovation, and that incorporates S&T, science and technology, R&D, research and development, and once again, innovation is not within the walls of a university lab. It's a cross-cutting issue whereby frugal science can easily be translated into nationalization and commercializations. Then we have the ICT infrastructure. And I would like to recount a very famous person, his name escapes me. He says some of the best innovative ideas were born on a kitchen table or a kitchen desktop. So we need to create an environment that's more filled with enablers than inhibitors. And I was very fortunate to conduct a study for the World Bank and the European Investment Bank and the CMI on identification of knowledge transfer channels, knowledge absorption and retention in the Arab world, focusing on Jordan. And I dare say there are so many things we can do that are push buttons that can mobilize knowledge economy. I highlighted some of them in red, namely FID, which is the fastest, education, which is the strongest, and two bottlenecks standing in the way of our graduating students. Ease of opening new business, or maybe let me say difficulty of opening new business, and IP rights. Now you have a farmer who doesn't know how to read and write, who might come up with a hybridized plan, that's my biology side talking, that is tolerant for drought and salinities. What are his rights? Do we give him intellectual property rights? And do we nationalize and commercialize? So that it's very important to mobilize two ministries. The Ministry of Trade and Industry, to create incubation for graduating students, to 5 years grace period, and the Ministry of Justice to wise up and shape up in order to be able to deal with all of the electronic cases and cyber security, not to mention cyber crimes, which is also another adverse, accelerating phenomena, together with the positive aspects of the technology. Now let me shift gears and come down from the national level and talk about 5 points that might be interesting to the educational sector. What are the sound educational policies? What is a good model of innovative financing? What is a scalable model? OER and CC, Open Educational Resource and Creative Commons Licensing, and the future. So what makes a successful ICT-based educational policy? And what are the commonalities among the strongest education systems in the world? In 2009, I was one of the speakers, the only Arab speakers in Europe among 30 European ministries. And I thought to myself, aha, when I go back, I'm going to make a study. I'm going to study all the best education systems in the world, and I want to find out what are the commonalities. I want to get this formula and give it as a gift to the developing countries. And I went to my desk and I started to work, and surprise, there's nothing in common. Actually, the best education system in the world had nothing in common. One of them was run by the public sector, one of them was run by the private sector, or even municipalities. And their incentives and teachers' trainings model were very different. So what is it that brought them together? Actually, they were guided by 5 indicators: educational context, ICT policy, curricula and ICT, digital learning resources and services, teacher education for ICT. What does this mean? It means that they were approached and they were asked, for example, we want fully enabled students, but they never told them how. Every country found its own way. And for those who love details, here are some details and aspects of the indicators, the major indicators and sub-indicators. Let me move to an innovative financing form. In 2009, there was a general conference at the level of the United Nations and the 35C Resolution 12, by which they decided they want to select 12 consultants or specialists in the world to come up with innovative models for financing education, because, as you very well know, governments tend to spend on defense and other issues rather than education. And I was fortunate to have been selected as one of those 12 persons. And what was our innovative model? It was debt swap, meaning that if Jordan has a debt with a creditor, instead of paying back, they can pour it in. For example, 100 million is needed to build our schools. So rather than paying back to the debtor at the end of the year, we take the 100 million and pay it to the education. And you will ask me, what are the guarantees? We issue domestic bonds. Why? Because we found out that most of the world has stagnant, sitting deposits in trillions. They're doing nothing. They're just sitting in deposits, in funds, in banks, in social security, or other areas. So we want to tap in this resource. We want to take it and use it for education. But then you'll ask me, what guarantee do I have as a bank to get my money, or social security to get back my money? In this case, and in one scenario, the creditor would guarantee the domestic bond. So if Jordan fails to pay back, the creditor will step up to the situation, pay the money, but then it will be another matter of creditor-debtor relationship and credibility of the country. This is just an innovative model, but I pressed on them to send a delegation in Jordan and found that the eligible portion for debt swap stands as $3 billion US. I don't know if the Jordanian government's gone to ahead, but I wanted to share with you some innovative financing methodologies. Let's talk a little bit about scalability. In 2050, the Arab world is expected to be 600 million in population. You know very well that we are a youthful society. 50% or more are children under the age of 15 or 17. And that is why we're talking about 300 million people who need to be educated fast to catch up with the acceleration. So, don't come and tell me you have a great program teaching 2,000 people in Saudi Arabia, but they have 500,000 teachers. Or teaching a handful of teachers in Egypt when they have 2 million teachers. So, we need to scale up. I was fortunate to have been running a program under the umbrella of the World Bank, covering 35 countries, training 4 million students, and I spent 10 years tweaking the model. I tweaked it to increase cost-effectiveness without affecting the quality. And I trained in 14 country projects, 10,000 teachers, reaching 200,000 students at the rate of 100 students per teacher. By this formula, because in our Arab world, we have congested, overcrowded classrooms, several sections per class, so you can easily reach this figure. On my board of directors was Her Majesty Mrs. Asma Al-Assad, of course Her Majesty Quiraya, Mrs. Asma Al-Assad, Bahia Al-Hariri, and Mrs. Asma at that time, before the war, she was extremely receptive to the idea and agreed to test my model and scale up by training 10,000 teachers in one go and reaching 1 to 2 million students. Now, I would like to say that the cost per student is per year is $1. But when you nationalize it within the system, it drops down to a negligible amount, few cents per student, because you're incorporating in your already budgeted system. And that's why I had assurance that my model works. So all we have to do is just choose 5 countries and apply the program. And then over 5 years, we can easily reach 100 million Arab students at a minimal cost on very high level ICT-based knowledge economy, entrepreneurship skills, 160 hours. And I'm talking about skills of the future, which I know you all know by heart just like me: creative, critical, analytical thinking, problem solving, applying research in your work, working collaboratively in groups, distantly, communications, etc. So what does this model look like? This is the 1,000 teacher increment that is increased to 10,000 and then 100,000, because you don't want to blast the country all at once. You want to gradually build in the power, and by the way, these are run inside the country by the country itself. So with this, we can easily reach 100 million Arab youth in less than 5 years with the same, if not less than the money we're already spending. Let me talk about another page in my presentation, OER and CC. I was fortunate to have been invited by the Open Book Initiative by the US Department of State to visit the most renowned universities in the world, MIT, Harvard, Stanford, etc. And all of them have all their content online, meaning if you wanted to study the same curricula of MIT, all you have to do is log in and just go ahead and train on whatever information you want. I'm not sure about the certification. It depends on the university. There's something very precious called Creative Commons licensing. As you very well know, it's a global non-profit agency whereby you can publish anything online and protect your rights. For example, one ideal way to use it is to create instructional pedagogy that is free of charge for any human being to use in order to build up the skills. This is one of the points I raised up at Google headquarters when they proudly showed us a pie. Look, we have so much online content in science, in math, and I said, you're missing one thing. You are missing instructional pedagogy. In other words, 2 people log online. One of them has upper order skills, One of them barely knows how to use the computer. Do you think that the same material in their hands is the same? And that's why it's very important to have out there, free of charge, such a methodology, and protected by Creative Commons licensing. And those who are knowledgeable about it, you can use three attributes. Three things. Attribute, which means you have to you can take the activity, change it, and attribute to the original writer. You can remix it, change it, as long as you attribute, and you're not supposed to use it commercially. And finally, I want to take a look at this technology, and I highlighted only three in blue. Harvesting clean water from air, liquid fuels from sunshine, and genomic vaccines from the genes. And these are the top 10 technologies to make this year's list, and that was last year, by Murad Somez, member of the World Economic Forum. So the future is already here. We're talking about, imagine, harvesting water from air and fuel from the sunshine. And I'd like to leave you with my most favorite quotes by the former US Secretary of Education, Mr. Richard Riley. The top 10 in-demand jobs in 2010 did not exist in 2004. We're currently preparing students for jobs that don't yet exist, using technologies that haven't been invented in order to solve problems we don't even know are problems yet. Thank you, and I'm ready for questions. Sorry, we don't want to press you. If you have any comment or question or challenge me, we have 1 or 2 minutes for that. I guess it's too early in the morning. I have to back the microphone to our guests. Thank you.
Hello, yeah. Challenge question.
Yes, please.
Just a little bit perplexed with the cost estimation of this model.
Yes.
Because your estimation is, you said, a few cents per student.
I'll explain to you.
Yeah, I mean, what are basically, does your cost model, what are the assumptions for your cost model? What did you include there? Did you leave out most costly things? Or?
I have the extravagances, which we can always add on, such as, for example, I always like to end my project with a video documentation. So let me come back to the original question. I ran 14 country projects at the cost of $400 to $400,000 US per project over 2 years. What does this incorporate? It incorporates teachers training. And let me tell you, sir, if you don't pay the trainer at the Ministry of Education, he's not going to train. Sadly, so many donor agencies don't believe in money, and they just want to bypass what the nations really want. But I found out that paying the trainers is very crucial. Sometimes, in one of the ICT literacy courses, not emerging technology, I found out that serving a cup of tea and a small snack helped the teachers attend. So let me say that we spent $1 million on training, covering the cost of the trainer, the person who opened the door and closed the door, the logistics coordinator, and sometimes in very special situations we would give stipends for transportation. We pay $20,000 US to print the material, and that is, you have to multiply it by 4 for scholastic years. Now, why did this drop? When I applied to the program in Syria, I used to pay $20,000 US for printing the material. When I printed them, when I nationalized the project, of course, it wasn't the donor-funded money anymore, and Syria is printing, I think, $5 to $10 million US annually for textbooks. So when you print for a few pages of the training course, it is negligible. They have their own printing press. So I no longer have to pay for my cars because we are using the already existing garages, and sometimes we can ask the teachers to volunteer part of their time by releasing them and using their own salaries. I'm not necessarily doing that, but I'm saying when we nationalize the system to be part of the national budget, incorporated in an offer.
You don't get with the cost. The salary that they are getting from
if you want to start the first, no, the salaries are not included, of course. No, nobody will go as far as that. But if you are interested, I can give you the entire training model. What I did is that I made an Excel sheet that translates every single action, who's in charge, what is the cost, and one copy is with me, one copy is with the country, and because it's a slow motion project, it was so smoothly run. So I can give you more information if you want. I hope I managed to just answer you a little bit. Thank you very much.
Okay, good morning. Sabah al-Khair. So we are starting our first morning session. We have 4 speakers, actually from 3 different continents, from Africa, Asia, and Europe. The first speaker is not with us, but Yusuf will be delivering the speech for him. So I will ask Yusuf to come on stage. Then I will ask the other speaker to join us on the stage. Benjamin Aribisala from Nigeria, Africa. Dayan Nasser from Palestine. And Lars Fischer from Denmark. Start Yusuf. So Yusuf will be delivering the speech of Congo. Lars.
Good morning. This is Omo Boya from Senegal. So he is a different guy, but we call ourselves as cousins. So I'm happy to speak on his behalf, but I cannot do the presentation as he has, because he is actually the engineer of this project, the content sense. But before I go to this slides, which I will just read them, the main intention of this session is to focus on, let's say, you see, it's all about how open access, open library repositories, open science, and you see recently there was an announcement on European Open Science Cloud, and my colleague Yamin will be speaking also about the African Open Science Platform. So it's all about access and providing access to resources, mainly to make resources available to all our communities. So a proposal came out from one region, it's what we call it sense. It's about library support for embedding entrance, services, and the infrastructure. The main idea is to bring entrance together with librarians, because the librarians, again, are one of the very important resources for data and books, journals, whatever. So I recall an example in Jordan when the Jordanian University Network was established. The best good user who started the first to use the network was the libraries. So there was a consortium of libraries in Jordan that have established common services together, and they have established one service center for all universities utilizing the infrastructure, so that we have there was the cost and making one system available for all of us. So back to Omo. So the main goal is to define collaborative agenda for libraries. As I said, libraries are facilitator and enabler, and they can provide access, provide the infrastructure for the libraries to collaborate. Also, we would like to achieve improvement in information management capacity. Also, we would like to work on federation of open access repositories and also to the community practice to be prepared for the open access for open science. Who's working with this? Actually, this project is funded by the Africa 22 project. It's one of the main projects supporting Africa. All the activities that are conducted by ASREN, which represents the North African part of Africa. So I'm representing Africa. And the Open Alliance, which represents the east and south part of Africa, and WACREN, which represents west and central part of Africa. We are cooperating with the EIFL, or I think one more thing we touch there. Also, the consortium of open access resources, also consortium of open access repositories, and also the African level in, I can't read it from here. That one. So we are all working together to collaborate with this project. The main players on this are, as I said, the Indians. They can have a major role in this. The higher education levels, they will be one of the main and large contributors on this. And the content providers. So altogether, we will collaborate to establish, to implement this project. So the broad objectives, I think repeating part of that is already repeated. We would like to identify key institutional enablers in challenge support for boarding. So I will not read that. What we will do is to work on some kind of collaboration, so that we would like to identify, start working on be prepared for the open access and open infrastructure. So there will be a role of libraries, there will be a role of entrance as identity provider, and also we would like to aggregate open access metadata for to improve tracking and discovery of content and raise visibility for researchers. So it's all about, again, providing access to, at the end of the day, we want to provide the best means of access and to data for the researchers. So the steps that we are going to do, I think it's explained here, yeah. So we will have a survey for every Indian region. There will be a survey, it has been already done in Ubuntu Alliance region. There will be another survey in WACREN region. It will be the first quarter of 2019. Another one in ASREN region. It will be in second quarter of 2019. After that, we will follow up and we will conduct a regional workshop in each region. So one workshop has already been done in Zanzibar, in Tanzania, last 2 weeks ago. There will be a workshop in Accra on March 11 to 12, 2019. Another workshop in Alexandria, it will be in Egypt, on April 22nd to 29th of April. So please, you are invited to join the workshop in Alexandria. The other, you are also invited, but I think as the Arab region, it's not, by the way, the workshop is not dedicated for Africa now. Now all Arabs are, even the Human Connect 3 partners are also welcome to participate in this workshop and to learn. So we can take this, the Alexandria workshop for our region. I will make it regional beyond Africa, so that we can all work together and make use of this this project for the benefit of the whole Arab countries. So there was a workshop that has, as I said, that has been done in the WACREN in Ubuntu Alliance region, and there were participation of 17 countries to work on collaboration on advocacy, technical support, capacity building, value-added services. So the workshop results, I can share it with you so that you can have a look on the workshop result, and thank you. Any question to Omo?
Thanks, Yusuf. go to the next page.
Thank you, Abib. I have two targets for this presentation. The first one is to introduce Africa Open Science Platform to us. And the second is to share a project we're working on. It's an ongoing project, and we'll be happy to receive comments. We have a number of projects we're working on, but just one of them will be presented this morning. So the outline, just to say that I give some background information, then talk about open science and open data, African Open Science Platform as my first target, and then talk about the project, which is largely on infrastructure, ICT infrastructure framework, a framework we're proposing for the continent of Africa. Now, I would like to start the background information by looking at two papers. There have been issues on repeatability in scientific research. And there is a paper in 2009 that tried to see to what extent can we actually repeat a research finding. And so this paper looked at 18 articles in Nature, and these articles were on microarray gene expression analysis. So the focus was to see, can we repeat these findings, repeat the experiments and see what could come out of it. You'll be surprised that out of 18, only 2 were reproducible. Now, 6 reproduced, but with discrepancies. So that means you actually get a result different from what the researchers reported. And then 10 were not, it was impossible mission, so they were not reproducible. So now, what were the reasons listed by the paper? Data not available, methods unclear. So the papers were not written in a way that somebody could understand how the methods could actually be repeated. Now, software not available and contradictory results. So in the area of contradictory results, maybe one says that there is an association between, a positive association between one variable and the other, and then you see a similar paper saying there is no correlation. So now there is another paper, the second paper, which says it's not only about repeating or reproducing, but there is more to scientific research, because we know the advantages of scientific research in the area of solving common problems and human problems. So we need to make sure that our findings are not only repeatable or reproducible, but it should be possible to replicate them and to reuse them. And so the paper focused largely on more about more things, that are interested in scientific research. So now the key thing is about collaboration. And on that note, I want to appreciate the organizer of this conference. Bringing us together shows we have the spirit of working together. So collaboration is the key. If we must solve common problems, common human problems, then one person cannot do it alone. We need to come together. And if repeatability, reproducibility, and if we want to replicate or we want to be able to actually reuse findings, then collaboration is the key thing. And the other thing is about sharing. So what do you share? A lot to share, a lot. We share data. Without data, no research. Now, we share ideas. We share even notes, lecture notes, and so many other things. Infrastructure, which is my focus in the project we're talking about. And then we need to be open as possible. And so that leads us to the idea of open science and open data. So there are different definitions you can see about open science and open data on the internet, but this one I love. So it describes open science as a practice of science in such a way that others can collaborate and contribute, where research data, lab notes, and other research processes are freely available under terms that enable reuse, redistribute, and reproduction of research and its underlying data and methods. So, and that could link us with the speech of the keynote speaker this morning about Creative Commons. So open science allows us to share everything. because no matter the research you do, no matter what I do, we want to solve problems. So then we need to work together, because a team can do by far more than what a single person can do. So open data is any data that is freely available. And so you can use it anyway, and not for commercial purpose anyway. So there are 6 keywords. They are free: collaborate, data, reuse, and you can reuse, share methods and knowledge. So it's all about open science and open data. Now, I want to talk a little bit, 2 slides on African Open Science Platform. So African Open Science Platform is an initiative in Africa that promotes the values of open data and, of course, open science in emerging scientific culture of big data. We know about big data, and we know that we need to develop techniques to help us analyze and take, informed decision from the data. So African Open Science Platform is focused on this openness, and the goals are 4. So to develop standard open data policy, so policy formulation, and to develop robust capacity building plan. And then 3, to advocate open science and open data, and to coordinate series of actions connected or channeled towards promoting openness in science. So that's the focus of Africa Open Science. So, but this slide is just to give us, the funder, which is NRF, and we work with CoData, so directed by CoData and ICSU, and ASAF, which is Academy of Science in South Africa, manages African Open Science Platform. Now, about the project that I say is ongoing, so that's ICT Infrastructure Framework. Now, what is the framework we're talking about? We know infrastructure normally is anything that we need when you need to communicate your data, data communication. So anything that you use that supports, flow, storage, processing, and analysis of data. So these are infrastructure. So this could be physical or virtual infrastructure. And the framework is nothing but guidelines. So our target is to actually develop guidelines for ICT infrastructure. So this is just to show us some infrastructural components, in data communication. So why ICT Infrastructure Framework? Why the project? Yes, researchers need data, no doubt about that, and the data must be fair. So fair in the context of findable, accessible, then interoperable, and you must be able to reuse them. So now, good data management requires good infrastructure. So you want to keep your data properly, then you need infrastructure. And you want to send it via a network, the infrastructure, network key infrastructure is there. And open science and open data require infrastructure sharing. So most African nations have poor budgetary allocation for ICT. I'm impressed at, the amount of, what we have seen in Arab nations, and we read about how much the Arab nations, allocate for infrastructure, but it's not exactly the same story everywhere. So there is no guideline on minimum requirement for ICT infrastructure. We try to see if there could be a guideline. Take, for example, I want to start a research institute. So what are the kind of infrastructure that I should put in place as it relates to ICT? We couldn't find anything. So we thought it is really important that we have something in place that people could actually use to know what is a good requirement for ICT infrastructure. Now, expected content of the framework. So now we know that, or what we want is that this framework must support and promote open science and open data. And so, but when you think about it, African nations, in terms of development and in terms of budgetary allocation to ICT generally, they are not the same. So now to generalize may be a little bit challenging. So we thought, but we wanted, the minimum benchmark. A generic guideline would just be sufficient for us. And so the content are supposed to be in 3. So we think about internet connectivity and role of NREN, And then we talk about, we are thinking of hardware and software requirements and data lifecycle. So attributes of the proposed framework. One, we want it to be service-driven, because if you just say ICT infrastructure and you think about maybe data communication, and you say a particular requirement should be met, now it's difficult except when you know the service that you want to render through that infrastructure. So we want something that is service-driven, because service do vary from one region to the other. And fairly generic will just be our target. And framework should be focused on promoting open science. And so the framework is supposed to guide the stakeholders as to what to offer, so that the employees will be able to do their job, and the requirements in terms of internet, software, hardware, as I mentioned. Now, I will just take this one after the other. Now, the content, the framework, internet connectivity, hardware, and data lifecycle. Then I wrap up on that. So now, internet connectivity. You'll be surprised at the cost of internet, in Africa. I pay £20, for my entire household, 6 of us in the UK, and for my children to do their homework, to watch television and everything. With £20, I'm okay. But in Nigeria, I pay about £40 for myself alone. I'm the only one in Nigeria, so the family is in the UK. So I pay double what I pay in the UK in Nigeria. So it's extremely expensive. But if we build on infrastructure, then things will be better for us. So we think that in terms of education stuff, then we should have something like a roadmap on guiding institutions on campus network. Most universities in Africa do not have good campus network, and bandwidth requirements, where they do have it, you see the bandwidth is an issue. Network policy, the role of NREN, and that's perfectly good for this, for the delegates here, because we have experts from NREN, and the role of governments. So in terms of internet connectivity, these are the content we are thinking about. And the role of NREN, I don't want to preach to the converts, but here, what we just think is that there should be part of the framework to tell governments, to encourage them to join NREN, and then the requirements for joining NREN. And that would just be good, because we know NREN is doing very well. Now, in terms of hardware and software requirements, this is difficult to generalize, so we have to be, service specific. So we identified about 5 services that could drive at least the framework. So the first one is federated identity, data repository, and then we have data transfer service, and then a prioritized suite or portfolio of services. So in terms of federated identity, so the idea is just to have part of the framework to stipulate the requirements to join or to be able to use federated identity. And data repository is quite similar. So what are the hardware and software requirements that you need to put in place if you want to offer a service on keeping data? In cloud computing is similar, the requirements for cloud computing services if you want to offer any, and then data transfer pretty similar. And lastly, data lifecycle. So we believe that we need to have a clear statement about how to manage your data, even from data creation to the usability of the data. So thank you very much. So appreciation to the entire team and to you for listening.
Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you today, and I would like to sincerely thank Dr. Troman and ASREN for inviting me and to participate in such a wonderful conference and meet wonderful colleagues. Hence, being a librarian, and as libraries are to support education, learning, teaching, and research, I will focus in my presentation on the importance of partnership, connectivity, networking, collaboration to enhance and promote knowledge sharing, which will be reflected positively in the future on our users, researchers, and educators. I will tackle also our experience with IFL, Electronic Information for Libraries, of which I'm representing my country with, the challenges we're facing or we're having, why to cooperate with ASRENs, and the potential areas of collaboration. It's not working. Who is IFL? IFL is an international non-profit organization that partners and works with developing and transition countries. Around 47 countries are in the group. The first page. No problem. Okay. So IFL is a non-profit organization that partners and works with countries, transition and developing countries. The members now are around 47 countries, among which is Palestine. They reached more than 3,300 libraries in those countries, and they served more than 8,500,000 people. What is the challenge that's facing libraries? Digital technologies has revolutionized the ways in which we access, share information, communicate, and learn. However, billions of people around the world are still incapable and unable to reap the benefits. The approach that IFL is doing, as I mentioned before, they partner and work with libraries and library consortia because they believe that this is the most sustainable way to improve access to knowledge. What are library consortia? They are groups of libraries that have the same aim. They share common goals. They speak with one voice to policymakers and funders. They consist of university, research centers, public libraries, and other institutions. Their potential is to share resources and activities and to reach millions of users efficiently. Who is PALICO? PALICO is the Palestinian Library and Information Consortium, introduced in 2005 after the help of IFL. Now we are 16 universities and colleges. The Committee of Academic Libraries, which was established in 1987, was the core body of this consortium. IFL-PALICO relationship. Why we have to partner with other organizations? Because we are all seeking the same approach and seeking the same goal to help our users at the end. So our relationship with IFL is through three major programs: the licensing program, the copyright, and open access. What is the challenge in licensing? Access to commercial e-resources is essential for research and education. The high subscription costs and fees and inadequate connectivity create a major barrier for libraries and their users in developing and transition countries. So what is the role of licensing program? Is to expand access to commercial e-resources. IFL does the negotiations with the publishers to get affordable prices and affordable access to the e-resources. Our role in PALICO, in our consortium, is to ensure the widespread adoption and usage of licensed e-resources. The second program is copyright. The challenge The restrictive copyright laws create legal barriers to using resources for education research and socio-economic development. What has copyright to do to promote a fair copyright system? IFL helps us build capacity for the librarians in copyright. It campaigns for national copyright law reform. But still, with our Palestinian copyright law, we're not reaching any point yet. PALICO advocates for rules to benefit the libraries. The third program is the open access, which is well known all over. Research is critical to improving development and solving global health, agriculture, and environment challenges. However, the majority of the world's peer-reviewed articles are still locked in subscription journals and inaccessible to researchers in developing and transition countries. What we shall do? Remove all the barriers to knowledge sharing. What does IFL do? IFL builds capacity to publish open access journals and to help people and consortia to set up their open access repositories. PALICO builds open access and institutional repositories. PALICO now. We have a strong consortium. We helped our members to save the costing by introducing them to free access e-resources. Now through IFL, we are getting around 12 resources from different publishers for free. We are looking for prices reduction on some subscriptions. We help our members to build their capacity. We do training and workshops, and we are ahead preparing webinars. We advocate for the role of libraries, and the major important thing is to increase visibility of research output through institutional repositories. Birzeit University, where I work, has introduced and launched its open access repository, FADA, in October 2016. 3 universities are joining now through a ROMOR project through the EU Erasmus+. Started 2 years ago, and it will end in 2019, December 2019. Now, why we are looking for open access repositories? To make all data and information available to our users, to share information among these institutions, and our future goal is to establish a national open repository among these 4 institutions, because they are already in place through ROMOR project, and in the future to add all the other 60 or the other universities on the consortium to this track. We also share knowledge and networking. The challenges we are facing: use of ICTs in teaching, learning, and research is now vital, as is being part of networks for academic and research collaboration. Academic and research libraries, since they are support teaching and research, they must be equipped with appropriate technologies and be partners in all networks, national and international. Electronic resources are invaluable research tools that increasingly replace print-based resource. E-resources are underutilized due to the slow connectivity and other reasons, such as inadequate computer infrastructure, not in all the members of the consortium, but with few of them, mainly in Gaza. Connectivity is inadequate to allow sharing of e-resources across networks or remote access by researchers off campus. Open access institutional repositories cannot be accessed easily when connectivity is poor, despite their potential to increase use, visibility, and impact of research output. Why does it make sense for libraries and ASRENs to cooperate? To ensure the availability and accessibility of affordable high bandwidth in academic and research libraries in support of research, development, and academic teaching and learning. Second, to contribute significantly to improved connectivity and affordable high bandwidth in libraries for the wide use on and off campus for electronic and non-electronic resources by the research and academic institutions. What are the potential areas for collaboration between libraries and ASRENs? As we see it, involvement in ANREN's meetings to share knowledge and discuss developments. PALICO ANREN jointly advocate to improve connectivity. PALICO in turn can furnish statistics of access and downloads in Palestine and in all other IFL countries to show the actual and potential data traffic. To share of e-resources on a wider level, and to encourage the open access publishing and open science to improve research and education. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very proud to have been allowed to come here once again to speak to the ASREN community and to join this great conference. It's a wonderful community here, and I've enjoyed my time here very much, as I've done in previous visits, so thank you very much for that. I'm here today to talk about an effort we're doing in NoGNet in supporting what we call emerging NRENs around the world, and in particular about a single program that we're doing with some of these emerging NRENs that is an effort to try to do some knowledge transfer in bringing some of the experience we have in doing distance learning to other regions of the world. But before I go into that, let me just very briefly talk to you about NoGNet, since not all of you may know who we are. NoGNet is the regional network for this part of the world, the Arctic part of Northern Europe. It's cold, but for some reason we like it there. The Nordic area is made up of 5 independent countries: Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Iceland. Each of these have an NREN of their own. They each do their own networking. They each do their own services. They each have their own policies, their own educational system. They are both, in terms of policy and culture, somewhat different, but have a very long tradition of working together. 1,000 years of history of waging war at each other, and we figured out that didn't work very well for us, so we've been finding other ways to collaborate in recent years. And so one of the things they have done together is create NoGNet, is their vehicle for doing international networking and for connecting them together and for connecting them and engaging with the rest of the world. So we represent about 1 million academic users of internet services. So each of the countries, as I said, have their own networks. They're advanced networks, they're advanced NRENs. They have full fiber footprint in the entire region, even at 70 North, even at, where it really is frozen and Arctic, there is still 100 gig networking, and there are people living there. You might not think so, but there are. So they're very advanced, but they each run their own networks. Our job at NoGNet is to connect these networks together and to connect them to wherever in the world they want to connect to. We both connect them to academic networks all over the world. We, of course, work very closely with Xiang. We connect them to Xiang. It's very important to us. We also connect them directly to important European e-infrastructures, to things like CERN, and we do commercial upstream for them. So we also connect them to the commercial internet, and for that we connect on our own network to the US, for example, because we do our own peering. We nearly do not buy commercial traffic. We do settlement peering all over the world. We're very fortunate to have been able to build a network that is global and that allows us to do that. So NoGNet, for all its infrastructure, is really a community of people, because we believe that the community is way more important than a particular technology or a particular service. And NoGNet has always been a community. It started that way. It started with networkers coming together, trying to learn from each other, trying to share experiences, and they started out not creating a network, they started out creating a conference called the NoGNet Conference. They did that back in 1980. And through those discussions in those early conferences, the NoGNet as an organization and as a network took shape, and all the major steps and evolution of what we do have always taken place through the conferences. So it really is a vehicle for community building. It's a vehicle for figuring out what we do want to do together. And it's where we learn and where we share. So we believe the conferences are very important. These days we do two types of conferences. We do the regular NodeUnit conference, which is sort of broad but technical and focused. It brings a lot of management people. It brings a lot of high-level engineers. It brings a lot of leaders from the Nordic countries and from throughout the world. It rotates among the 5 Nordic countries, and it's done every 2 years. And the next one will be in Iceland, the most recent one. A number of the people in this room were there. We're in Elsinore, the home of Hamlet. You see his castle there. It was this year. In years when there's no NodeUnit conference, we do a NodeUnit technical workshop. And the NodeUnit technical workshop is even more community-focused. It doesn't have much of a formal program. It's a 4-day meeting where Nordic working groups, and we have a lot of those, people who work in routing, people who do media services, people who are interested in cloud service, where they come together and, debate. And it's a very dynamic and very technical meeting. Those who have worked with Nordic people know we're very quarrelsome, so it's often a very loud meeting, but it's very good, and that's very much where we figure out what we want to do in the coming years. And so, what do we do with that community that we built? Well, we've made a promise to our users, I believe, as NRENs, and we as NodeUnit to the NRENs that are a member of NodeUnit, that we will make sure that no matter what researchers and students are doing, no matter where they are, no matter what kind of things they're trying to do, they can use internet services, they can use the services we provide, they can use cloud storage, they can use computation, and they can use the internet. For anyone, anywhere, and anytime, no matter if it's in the Arctic, in space, or at a remote telescope in South America, we have to be able to service them. That's our simple promise. It's not always easy to do, but it's our promise. And so, research education is becoming global. It certainly is global. And we live in a dynamic world. We live in a place where instruments are everywhere. We learned yesterday here about the Sesame project that runs an accelerator here in Jordan. We might have a researcher in Sweden who are using that instrument or want to collaborate with people using that instrument. We have to make sure they can transfer the data, that they can collaborate with them. We might have people in our region who work with a remote campus here. We might have to make sure they're connected, that that works. We might have visiting students. We might have students from this region coming to university in Iceland. We have to make sure all the services, everything works transparently. We might have a professor from University of Copenhagen who's invited to come to Lebanon to be a visiting professor for half a year there. Our promise to that professor is that the internet will work, his services will work when he's there. So we have to work with people in this region to make sure that everything works together and is integrated. We have to make sure that people who use the Sesame accelerator and want to collaborate with people in Sweden can move the data. And we have to make sure we're leveling the playing field so that no matter where researchers are, they are part of this global community of research. That is our promise as ASREN networks. I think that is what we should be doing. And certainly our value proposition as a business towards our researchers in our region is we will make that happen for you. You can trust us, this will work. Right. So how do we do that? We build a global infrastructure, we build a network. On top of that, we do storage and trust and identity services, and we have some computation, and there's some research instruments, telescopes, accelerators, all this stuff. People make observation, and they have ideas, and then, there's talent and knowledge, as we've talked about these past days, and we create human collaboration and interaction, and we facilitate that. That is really why we do research networking, to facilitate this human collaboration. Today we call it e-science, but we facilitate science, the infrastructure that is just there to make that happen. And so we built, for example, global network architecture where we try to connect all the world regions and make sure that everything is connected, that all the regions of the world can work together. We do that. That's an effort of the global ASREN networking community, of course. When I started in the ASREN community, it was all about creating a connection. Everybody was very, very excited. I remember when I got my university on the RNE network, we had 128 kilobit connection. It was fantastic, right? And we could send IP packets. I don't think we could do anything else, but we could send IP packets. I could do a ping to a university in a different part of the country. It was fantastic. A few years later, we were working. I was trying to find a map that included Jordan. I'm very sorry I couldn't do that. This is ASREN is sort of the predecessor of the Shang network that Eric is running. Eric was probably also around at this time. This is from 1989. It says in the slide, if you can read that there's a plan for in 1990 to connect Jordan and Syria also to the network. So already then that was the plan. We have to connect all the world because we all have to work together. It wasn't exactly 10 gigabits at the time, but we still wanted to connect the world. But the important point I think here is that that was what we did. Just connecting countries, connecting places, that was fantastic. We didn't think very much. Maybe we could send an email, but we had a connection. Today, that's not what our users expect, right? They have their phone in their pocket. They do WhatsApp and Skype and from everywhere down in the city center. So just offering a connection, that means nothing to modern users. They expect services. They expect cloud services. They expect to be able to access accelerators, use digital libraries and all this stuff. That's where we are today. But we're still the same organizations doing that. So these days, we look at developing services, we do cloud storage, we offer access to high-performance computing services, we offer access to research instruments, and we've seen that a lot of our users really want media services. They want to be able to work together, so they want digital meeting rooms, digital meetings, they want to use it from their desktop, they want to be able to work with their fellows all over the world. We do it ourselves. Every day I sit and have meetings with people across the world from my computer screen, right? They want to do remote education, they want to do training, they want to flip the classrooms as we learned about these past days, they want all these technologies, and they want to be able to, at their campuses, record lectures as they take place. So they can, some campuses record every single lecture that take place and have it in a data storage so that if anybody wants to stream any lecture that take place, they can play it back. And that takes a lot of storage, takes a lot of technology, takes a lot of experience how to do that and to play it back correctly. And so what we do today as Nodenet is not so much, well, we do still do the connections, but the real value out of what we do comes from the fact that we do this. We help them do this. We make sure that even if they do a remote classroom with 2,000 students at the same time, it will work. Then data streaming, all those gigabits of traffic that takes, will still work. If they want to record and store every lecture they ever did, that will work. We have the technology for it. So that's what we do now, or one of the things we do now. So I believe we are integrating all these services. We have all these things, the users, institutions, the media service, the VHPC stuff, the instruments, all the academic resources. And as NRENs, our job is to bring all that together and to make sure that anyone, anywhere, anytime can use them. Right? And so, for Nodenet, things as I talked about before, sometimes our researchers travel, sometimes our students are half a year in Egypt or half a year in the United States, or a professor from here comes to University of Copenhagen. We have to make sure we can work together. So we created, a few years ago, an Emerging NREN program. It's a fellowship program where we sponsor, or we have sponsors, who invite staff members from emerging NRENs to come and visit our community. And we do that by inviting them to what we believe is the cornerstone of our community, our conferences. So we pay for travel, accommodation, conference, and in connecting to the conference, we also do a post-conference program where we spend a week with people, bringing them in to meet our management team, bringing them to meet our NRENs, bringing them to meet, build the human network, bring some of the experience, do some knowledge transfer to the things we usually do in our networks. So the format is, we bring people to attend our conference, plus spend a couple of days. We make sure they have a steward. There's always somebody with them who will help them meet the community, help them engage with us. And we do community building, and we try to do NREN knowledge transfers. And there are people in this room who've been part of this program. At least personally for me, it has been great because I have formed great contacts with people in this region who have been in this program. And that's important for me, because This might seem like something we do from the goodness of our heart. It's not. We're Scandinavians. We're not like that. We do it because it's a benefit for us. The fact that there are people in this room who have been in this program that I now know very closely means that if I have a user who's visiting Lebanon and needs a service, I know who to call, and I know there's somebody there who will help them, somebody I can trust. So that's really why we do this, right? We hope it also benefits the people who attend, but we do it for us. Make no mistake about that. So we do it at our conferences. We do mostly management level people there because that's what the conference focus is. So we do, events related to that for people who visit about the NREN value proposition, about how we operate an NREN, how we manage an NREN. And we do meetings there to try to build future partnerships and to see if there are things we can do together. If there are people who use the Sesame Accelerator and there were people who joined the program, well, let's make a partnership around that and see how we can support each other. We also do it for our technical workshops. There we invite fellows who are engineers. We do events there where we bring them to our NARC. We sit them down with our network planning teams, with our network engineers, and try to, show them how we do network management, show them the tools, ask them what would they like to see, show them how we run trust and identity service, how eduroam works. We bring them to campuses in the Nordic area that run eduroam, that run edugain, that have data centers, and let the campus people talk to them about how they run these services. So we try to give them a technical community, try to make them part of our technical community, give them a human network, make sure we have mutual support to transfer knowledge, but again, to build a network so that if I have a project with researchers that are doing things in Ghana, I know a very capable engineer at the NREN in Ghana that I know can help me. So again, it's for benefit of all partners, right? So knowledge transfer is very important. Human network is very important. The community is important. That's what we do with NREN, I believe. So we believe that the Emerging NREN program is just a start. It's really about building partnerships for global networking, partnerships for doing global services, for expanding the services so they're accessible everywhere. It's partnerships for building global collaboration so that we can do projects together. And we've seen already a number of spin-off activities from these things. We've seen just ad hoc support. People that have been part of our Emerging NREN program have come back to us and said, we're trying to do this thing with getting edugain up and running. We are struggling here. Do you have an engineer who could help? Or we need somebody to be our secondary DNS server, simple things like that. Could you do that? Have that in Europe? And of course we can help with that. We have had Emerging NRENs who have come back to us and said, we have particular engineers who want to learn how to do a specific thing, to do optical network and where it is. Could we send 3 engineers to stay with you for a week so we can run them through how to do that? And we've done that. We've had people who, we've done training visits. We've had people who sent policymakers to us in order to, have their policymakers meet with policymakers from our region to, learn why is it we have an NREN. And we have seen formal projects spin out of this. So we believe the Emerging NREN, building the human network, building the community is just a start. We really want to see this evolve as a community across the globe. So we have worked with, in this case it's the network of India that came to discuss with us some formal projects about doing connectivity between world regions. We had a visit from the Bangladesh NREN BDREN. They brought not just their management, but a number of people from their ministry, because they were struggling with their ministry and trying to make them understand why is an NREN important, why should the ministry fund and support an NREN. So we brought them to Copenhagen, and then we brought them to meetings with Danish ministry people who explained why are they supporting a ministry and try to do build up the understanding of why do you have an NREN. And that helped BDREN go back and win more support for their NREN at home and do more projects. So that, we believe that was very beneficial for them. It also built up for us some relations in that region, so that's very important. And one of the things that have come out of this is a project we're currently doing, initiated by BDREN, but with a number of NRENs in the Central Asian region. It's with Bangladesh, Thailand, Nepal, Philippines and Sri Lanka. And idea of that project is that we want to facilitate distance learning in that region using digital conferencing facilities. So the technologies we already use to do distance learning in our region, NRENs in that region want to do similar things. And they understand that we have some experience. We can't run the service for them. We can't even tell them how to do it, but we can explain how we are doing it, and we can hope to do a project where we transfer the knowledge we have about how to do things like that and help them get going. And we have been fortunate to get some funding through the Asia Connect program from the European Commission to buy some equipment and pay for some travel for this. Not for the time we spent, but for the travel. So the objective of this program is we want to deploy a digital conferencing platform in that region. We want to transfer the knowledge about how to run it. We want to do some enhancements for it, and we want to enhance our collaboration so that we can help each other make it a success. We want to facilitate distance learning courses for that region. And we want to train the trainers, because as I said, Nordnet doesn't have the capacity to do this, and we have no intention of taking over the world or of telling people what to do, but we can train people in that region to train more people in that region and help do this and run this system. So the Train the Trainer program is an essential part of this. We're doing an implementation, administration, federating the thing so the region works together. It's 5 NRENs in that region. They're collaborating, they're federating their efforts so that they're all using the same platforms, all using the same trainers, and, you know, traveling between the countries, spreading that knowledge. And then we will also to bring some people in from our region who have used this in classes, who are doing training with this, and you know, again, bring the experience of how to do a distance learning program. And we're now at the stage we've been doing this since the start of this year, where we are ready for deployment. We did a kickoff back in August last year. We have done a public workshop at APAN in the start of this year, and we did recently a very intense workshop where we did all the planning and figured out exactly how to do things in Bangkok this year, and yeah, with a single member from my team and a number of people from all these NRENs that were participating. We have built a sort of what we call a Zoom in a box. So Zoom is a digital conferencing system. And so we have installed all the equipment you need to run this platform in a single rack mount unit that is in a flight case. You can bring this as carry-on luggage, right? So we have built it and tested at home, and when we need to deploy these in any of these countries, the engineer who is going to set it up and help people, teach people how to use it, can just check it in with his luggage and bring it anywhere he wants to go. And it's pre-tested, pre-designed at home. And we have some support from Zoom, so the licenses for the first 3 years for the NRENs who are using this will be free. We have managed Zoom to do this because we're big Zoom customers and they want to be nice to us, I think. And they probably also see that maybe they can, you know, they're big emerging markets for the vendors here, right? So if those NRENs in Europe who are using these services go to the vendors we're using and say, look, we're talking to people in Bangladesh, we're talking to people in Egypt or in Jordan about using the services we are buying from you. If you give them a rebate the first couple of years, you'll get yourself a huge market. That's a big opportunity here. We should exploit that more.
Excuse me, Lars.
Yeah.
Are way over time.
Oh, way over time. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, sorry. So, very quickly wrap up. So the installation here, so the next steps here, we're going to install this next year. We're going to do a train the trainer program to make sure there's runs and deploy everything and get everything up and running. We have a year to do that. Nordnet is doing a similar initiative with ASREN at the moment. So really, all of this, just to highlight some of the things we've been doing with our Emerging NREN program. We are currently expanding the program. We're working with Xiang, with Eric's team, and with other European NRENs to do similar things. We're adding, and we have had a request from a number of people who've been in our program before who want to send more engineers from their countries back, so we're adding an eNREN alumni program. We very much believe in community building among the participants. We believe in having people from emerging NRENs come and be part of our community. We want to do this for future partnerships. We invite all of you to be part of a community with us because we believe that really our strength as NRENs is that we work together as a community. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. It's not a question. I'd like to share ideas with Benjamin and with you. I think the problem of open data is not related to avail infrastructure. The problem is related how to change the culture of bioscience scientists. Even in Europe, this culture was there a few years ago, and we can find many videos on YouTube trying to change the culture. I think it's very important to train the bioscience scientists on the scientific data management, including applying the data quality dimensions, because they are afraid to publish their data. Secondly, we would like to inform them that nowadays there are specific journals to publish the data, not publish the publications. In addition to this, I'd like to inform them there are many funding organizations insist to publish your data, to accept your proposals. And finally, there are many online repositories like GBEF. It's for biodiversity data sets. It contains about hundreds of thousands of data sets that they benefit from. And if we see this repository, we will not find few just data sets from African and from the Arabian area. Thank you.
With just two brief considerations, I've been listening yesterday as well as today to interventions having to do with data on one side and e-learning infrastructures and contents on the other side. First question, what do we mean by data? What do we mean by quality of data? What do we mean by big data architecture? What do we mean by data sharing? What do we mean of repositories unless we have structure? Structuring of data have to do with applications of artificial intelligence on one side, and on the other side of big data analytics, which are two specific fields of research. That's the first comment. Second comment, how about e-learning content? I've been working, well, first I had a presentation of mine at Doha in Qatar 4 years ago, where I had analyzed the typology of multimodal, multimedia contents in educational courses. The results was dramatic. I mean, many courses are not worthwhile being online. So who guarantees the quality of these contents? This is a very crucial point. Otherwise, we have hopes, we have expectancies which are not based on anything sound. So my idea would be that there should be a closer collaboration as far as these repositories for open access and open data access in order to come to a convergence of solutions of these problems.
Yeah, I have a question to Ormo. No, the question is regarding the workshop in April, and who's the audience of the workshop, and to prepare ourselves to attend the workshop.
Okay, but I will ask my question first, and then I will respond to your question. My question is also to Ormo. So, actually, it's not a question. I would like to thank all of the panelists for every presentation was distinguished in a dimension. But my focus is on Palestine. Thank you for the presentation, and I am happy that there is a consortium. And this message, I think, because we are working with Palestine, establishing an NREN and to be connected to our, so this could be jihad. This is the case that you can use for your with your minister and with your. This is one of the very strong case for working out something for the libraries. So, yeah. So actually, the libraries need NREN is the message for NRENs, but also for yours. Thank you for this message. Yeah, sorry, but regarding his question, because I have to be there. It's basically coming from the Africa Connect 2 project, but we will open it for NRENs and libraries, but maybe one representative per country because to make it efficient. So
the curriculum or the content of the workshop, so we need to present the proper people in the workshop.
Definitely, this is now we are announcing there is a workshop, so definitely we will share all the details with you.
Can I answer?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, with data sharing and sharing of knowledge is very important among not only libraries, among all partners, among all people who are working with networking, with any repository, institution, establishment, and so. What do we mean by sharing? Sharing, for example, if we take the case of Palestine, we have lots of theses, we have lots of papers, we have lots of distinguished materials that if we post or if we put on our repository, it will be open to other countries and to other people who are doing research and they couldn't find it somewhere else. So if each repository does the same thing, then this is what we mean by resource sharing and information sharing among researchers and Yes, you publish, what we do with our researchers, our repository, the university obliged all teachers and faculty members and staff who have publications to deposit them in the repository of the university, in FADA. So, if they have the embargo period with the publishers, they publish their periodicals, they publish their articles with different publishers, Elsevier and anyone else. Each has its own embargo period. So what we do with in our case, with our faculty, they put their final draft in the repository and it will be visible only by the BZU community, by our community. And when the embargo period is over, it will be open to the public on the repository. So this is how we are dealing with the different articles and papers that are published worldwide.
Can I respond to the question on quality assurance on e-learning? Now, every university is supposed to have a quality assurance unit. And in all nations of the world, there is an educational sector that moderates the value or the content of a degree awarding program. Like in Nigeria, we have NUC, a body we call NUC. So your program must be accredited before you can start to train people. So for you to have online materials, the university, all universities must have a technique in place. You must have that. And there is no university in Nigeria that runs distance learning without having the quality assurance. So the responsibility is that of the university of that particular nation.
There should be policies
so,
in such regard.
Yes, there are policies. There are policies. So just like the physical classrooms, you have to do moderation and quality assure, and there are policies in place. So it's the same. You can't just be awarding degree without passing through, the quality assurance procedure of that particular country. And to Ibrahim, thank you very much for your suggestion. Now, the project I presented is just one out of many. So we are looking at developing policy on ICT infrastructure. We have other parts of the team who are working on EG advocacy. So the culture is definitely what we need to work on. And the incentives, in fact, there is a team working on incentives for, when you open your research work. So we are quite aware of this, and we are working in different teams. So we have sub-teams. So I lead the team on ICT infrastructure, and there are other teams working in other areas. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, I think we should, if you don't mind, let's carry on the discussion in the coffee break. You have been the speaker, we can really approach them and initiate any sort of discussion you want. Okay? Let's, I think...